Hey everyone, so today I have some pretty exciting news. In the content creator chat, we got a sort of leak for the new Chaos Dungeons, which are supposed to be released next week. And I think they gave us this information today because they're confident that it will be released in next week's patch. So really exciting stuff. So to give you a little refresher, we've been seeing some screenshots on their Facebook page over, the past couple weeks. I think this one came out like a week or two ago, and then the most recent one, which was about 7 days ago, was this one. So I actually think this recent one is what's going to be relevant to the patch. I say this because, if you see here, this says No Man's Land, and then the other one is kind of like its own separate thing. So it's kind of odd. I don't know if this is a separate event or a different game mode, because what we're seeing here is not in this No Man's Land, where the most recent screenshot we're seeing No Man's Land here. It could just be some weird screenshot as well that they were using on a test server, and they're the same thing, but I don't know. This one seems to be more relevant to our case, but we do have some information on this dungeon, which is pretty cool. So I have enough to talk about the new dungeon. I think there's plenty of things that are being left out, but we have been told that there's going to be a Facebook post tomorrow, Saturday on April 15th. So stay tuned for that. I don't know if I'll make a video about it. If something new comes out, maybe I will. But today, we have information on what the bosses do, or at least some of their mechanics. So that's what today's video is going to be about. We're going to talk about some heroes just based on the information that we have, heroes that will be good in these dungeons. So let's just talk about it, okay? So here's the general info, all right? There's going to be those three dungeons, right? Wood, fire, and water boss, which is pretty interesting. And then after beating all bosses, stage 12, if you beat their stage 12, you'll unlock this mix boss. So in the Facebook post that they made, it specifically says these bosses will have, a lot of power and yada, yada, yada. But then it says, with the ability to alter its form and elemental attributes mid-battle, you must take caution in your approach. So if you're fighting the wood boss, I think it has the ability to switch into something else. Whether we know what it will switch into or not, I don't know. We don't have enough information about that, but it does bring an interesting mechanic to that boss. So that's pretty cool. And then on top of that, they say 5 units per team instead of 4, which is your usual dungeon teams. So that's also really neat. Now, I've asked Bulin, which is the community manager for Ace, what we get for beating these dungeons, and she said that it's gear, although I think it's going to be something more, to be honest. Looking at this screenshot, it does have 3 items here, so it could be gear, but at the same time, if you look in game, like if you look at some of the gear here, we have all of these sets except Bright Prophet. And this little icon has nothing to do with the screenshots here. So maybe it's gear and something else. I know in their roadmap, they were talking about releasing a new way to make your heroes stronger. So I'm guessing that's what this is, along with gear. But I don't know. They could switch it up. But she said just gear. But like I said, what's in the game right now is just that one set that we don't have anything for, which is that Bright Prophet. Everything else you can get from farming dungeons or forging. So yeah, that's that. Okay, so 5 units per team. Now, what we've been told is all of the bosses share the same mechanic, right? They have these 2 mechanics that they share amongst themselves, and then they get different mechanics, which we'll go over. So all the bosses can gain counterattack at the beginning of the battle. So I don't know what this means, because being at the beginning of the battle means it doesn't switch, like per round or per turn, unless this is a poor translation. So whether or not they'll gain it at the beginning and you have to worry about it or not is a really interesting thing. I think this is just wonky translations into English, but I'm assuming they get counterattack or they don't based on what you bring in. But we're just going to have to analyze that differently. But whenever I talk about the heroes that I think are going to be good, I'm going to assume that the boss is getting counterattack, okay? And then the second thing is they apply a bomb to all team members. So this is a really difficult thing to deal with. But the important thing that we need to figure out is if it will work like Ash Magisteria. So Ash Magisteria dungeon puts up a bomb on somebody with the highest health, at least at Hell Stage 4. Where is it here? Flame Bomb. And it's for 3 turns. So I don't know if the bomb on this new Chaos dungeon is going to work like that, where it's 3 turns. I don't know if it's 5 turns, and I also don't know if it deals the same amount of damage that Ash does, because it basically wipes your entire team. So if it works like Ash, man, that is something that you really got to worry about. So interesting there. Okay, back to what the individual bosses do now. So the wood boss says healing amount of enemies' teammates is reduced by 100%. So this is huge, right? I mean, in regular dungeons right now, Florence is kind of like the failsafe for anything wood related, because she outputs so much damage and then heals your team up. But the fact that the healing amount is completely reduced, this is pretty detrimental. I'm kind of thinking that Florence is still going to be good just because she increases damage output, and if you have her like in a faith set, she can put a shield on people. I don't know if this counteracts that as well, so I guess we'll have to see. I'm sure someone in the comments will know if Florence or somebody has an unhealable on her, if she still puts up the shield from faith or not, but you'll have to let me know. And then it says, at the beginning of the round, boss defense will be converted into attack. So that is huge, usually because bosses have really high base stats. This could be really, really dangerous. So I'm going to go over what they do individually, and then we'll talk about the heroes that I think are going to be good against them. So the water boss says the target will be frozen if it does not have an X number of positive effects. So automatically frozen on this attack if they don't have X number of positive effects. I don't know if that's 1, 2, 3, 4, yada, yada, yada. Okay? I don't know. So we'll find that out later. So this says applies X stacks of frozen seal to the enemy each round, and the damage of enemies with ice seal will be reduced by X. So whenever this person attacks, it deals X amount of this frozen seal, so I'm guessing it's similar to, Frostbite or something that Tia has in the game, or what the water boss has in Guild versus Environment. And then each stack that it has, it reduces your damage. So the question I have here is, can this be removed, or is it a static effect similar to the Guild versus Environment boss? Those are important things that we need to figure out. If it can be removed, there are some heroes that get much better in this dungeon versus heroes that, if it can't be removed, it's just an interesting mechanic then. And then the fire boss says at the beginning of the battle, consumes a large amount of HP to get a buff called Burnt Out. And then Burnt Out allows it to be immune to all true damage and poisons, etc. This is a really important thing. Because right now, giving itself this buff doesn't do anything for its damage or anything like that, at least what it's saying, although this number 2 also, I guess, incorporates that. But being immune to all true damage and poisons is really interesting because a lot of heroes already don't do true damage to bosses. So I'm expecting this to also increase its damage on top of what number 2 says. So number 2 says it gains crit up. So I don't know if this is crit rate or crit damage. I'm assuming it's crit damage. But it says reaching the X stacks. So I'm guessing it gets multiple stacks of this crit up. And it will increase the damage according to the ratio of lost HP. So we're going to talk about some heroes that I've talked about in other videos that I was speculating being good in these Chaos Dungeons, and it looks like we're getting some of those heroes vindicated here from my past videos just based on this. So now that we've done that, let's talk about each individual dungeon boss, and we'll talk about the heroes that are going to be good against them. So let's go into the index here. We'll talk about legendaries and epics, I guess. And the first one that we're talking about here is going to be the wood boss. So let's minimize this a little. Okay, so there's wood. Perfect. All right. So healing amount of enemy's teammate is reduced by 100%, counterattack, and bombs. So, firstly, Alicia, right? Alicia has this really cool trait that she gives everyone stealth, and it increases their damage. On top of that, if you're already noticing a trend, so not only will it ignore defense, but it will not trigger counter-attack effects. And what do the bosses gain? Counter-attack. So this hero is going to be really, really great for the wood boss for sure if this counter-attack is put up at the start of the battle. On top of that, this apply a bomb to all team members. She also has this ability that says upon leaving the stealth state, the team member removes a negative effect. So Alicia is looking really, really great for the wood boss. Not only for her damage, but also it doesn't enable the counterattack from the boss. And on top of that, it's going to remove that bomb from your team. So really cool stuff. A nice damage dealer. She's probably a premier DPS hero for wood because she also brings healing as well as mitigating some of that mechanics of the boss. So really cool hero in Alicia. I think Geralt is also really nice because he's going to counterattack whenever the boss counterattacks him, which is pretty interesting. And then if he gets 5 rage, he switches his mode and cleanses all of the negative effects on him. So he'll be removing that bomb from himself as well. He also has that defense pierce, which is probably going to allow him to do a decent amount of damage to the boss, as well as healing himself back up. I don't know on his counterattack, he gains this lifesteal. I don't know if this gets around the unhealable trait that the wood boss has or not. We'll have to stay tuned, but even if it doesn't, it does seem that his damage as well as being able to cleanse that bomb is already a plus for Geralt. So Florence is interesting. I don't know if the counterattack buff from the wood boss is enough, not enough, is like a buff that can be removed by Florence's A1 because she removes positive effects from the enemy. If it's a static effect similar to like Tulpa, then I don't know how viable Florence will be. I'm sure in some speed teams, because of the damage output, she's still going to be relevant. She's just a great hero. but we'll see how relevant she is other than just damage output. Now, Bachelard actually, I think, gets a huge buff in this dungeon, for sure. He has this really weird trait that I never understood, but now it makes total sense, which is interesting because he came out like a year ago. So, Ace is playing 4D chess with Bachelard. So, it says in his trait, when he's attacked by counterattacks, in his own turn, he reduces the damage by 100%. So he won't take any damage, and then he gives himself damage up. And then if you have Ascended 5, he actually gets damage up too. On top of that, he has a really nice debuff of defense down 2, which is amazing considering that this boss converts its defense into attack. So if it has defense down 2, it's not giving itself a whole lot of attack. So Bachelard is looking absolutely amazing for this Wood Chaos boss because it mitigates the counterattack, and then on top of that, it's putting a really big defense down on the boss to make him do less damage. So pretty cool that Bachelard's going to be relevant there. Bella, I don't know if this boss is going to have defense up similar to Tulpa or anything like that. I'm sure she's going to be a decent hero. Just from a DPS perspective, I don't know if she's going to be a premier one, though. Cirrus, I don't think Cirrus is going to be relevant in this dungeon. I think there are better picks, just specifically these 3 heroes that we've already gone over, so I don't think Cirrus is going to make her way in here. If there are waves to these dungeons, we don't know about that yet, or if you go straight to the boss, she might be okay there or not, I don't know. We'll have to see. Zitlin, I could see Zitlin being an okay hero for speedruns. Being able to put that curse up, it does seem that you want to kill all of these bosses pretty quick. So I don't know if this is like cumulative, like every time it just gains more and more attack, or if it resets at the end of each round. If it resets at the end of each round, you might not need a hero like Zitlin, but if it doesn't, being able to kill these bosses really quick might matter, and having Zitlin in there for a speed comp might be something. So Hector, I don't think this is going to be Hector's specialty. I think he's just going to be dealing with, guild versus environment bosses or guild boss. Brand is definitely going to be premier here, I think, because the healing is something that isn't going to be viable in this dungeon. Obviously, Brand's huge shields are going to be really nice. On top of that, he does have a cleanse, removing a negative effect on all team members, so he's going to be able to get rid of the bomb. So really important there as well. And then on top of that, he has a counterattack that applies attack down. So if you build him with enough focus as well, he's going to mitigate damage that way too. So I think Brand's going to be a premier hero in these Chaos dungeons. So Balberith, still nothing here. Ralph, I don't know. I'm sure he'll be okay for damage mitigation, but I'm assuming the damage is going to be really high. So I think he's still just going to be, a PvP specialist. Girinal, also, I don't think she's going to be premier for this dungeon. So I don't think she'll be viable. Darcy is an interesting one here for a couple reasons. One, I don't know how long these battles are going to last, but if she, slowly stacks up to her max battle spirit stacks, she could be a premier DPS with some self-healing. It also depends on if, her kind of life steal here works. I think Darcy will actually work, and I don't think that Geralt will work because of the way that this is worded. It's similar. It's kind of worded similarly to Thor, where it says it restores lost health. It doesn't say life steal. So this is very interesting. But anyway, going back to the mechanic here. So she can counterattack on a boss if she takes more than 35% of her max health, and then she'll counterattack for 150%, and then she can heal up to 100% of that lost health from that 35% max health damage. So that's pretty cool. On top of that, she grants herself invincible, which is going to help against the counterattacks from the boss. And on top of that, if she's A5, she grants immune to herself, which I'm assuming gets around the bomb. Right? So Darcy could be a really interesting hero for this dungeon. I've got some high hopes. Alicia, I don't think she's going to be relevant here. Levi. So Levi could be relevant. One, being able to do a lot of damage on his ultimate. Being able to deal 5 times the amount. Also, removing positive effects on the boss. Again, if he has that counterattack buff, if it's removable, this could be a very, very viable hero in this Chaos Dungeon for sure. That's really all of his relevancy is going to be. He can dodge some of the counterattacks, which could be cool for additional damage. So he might be a premier damage dealer. Gavin is another interesting one. So he's able to put immune on himself as well, which could block the bombs, as well as doing a bonus attack that steals buffs. So, well, it duplicates it. I shouldn't say steals. So I'm wondering if he can duplicate some of the increased damage that the boss has, if that's a buff, or if he can steal the counterattack. So I've got some high hopes for Gavin. That's one of the reasons why I pulled him. So on top of that, he does ignore defense. So I think this is the dungeon where Gavin is going to be kind of a premier hero over Bella, where Bella is better than him in Talpa. So high hopes for Gavin. Madsen does have, I guess he has a chance of being good here. One, because I don't know if this vampiric touch will get around the lifesteal application of the unhealable effect of the wood boss. If it does, he will be relevant. If it doesn't, he's not going to be relevant at all. So I'm thinking it will, though. The reason why I say this is because of his trait. He has this really interesting trait where it says when attacking enemies of an elemental disadvantage, increases all negative effect durations on them by 1 turn. So, as we know, these Chaos Dungeons, they flip their element halfway through once you get past, boss 12 or whatever. Right? What we saw from the Facebook post. So if the wood hero then turns into water halfway through, then this trait becomes relevant. So I think they built Madsen for these Chaos Dungeons, which makes me think that this vampiric touch will get around lifesteal. But we'll have to wait and see. All right, now this brings me to Rosalie. So Rosalie, when she first came out, I liked her, but I was also a little disappointed in her passive ability to launch that counterattack and remove a negative effect. I wanted her to be really, really good in PvP, and she actually is good in PvP. But man, these Chaos Dungeons is just where she thrives, right? Because of the switching in between the elements, I mean, Rosalie was built for these Chaos Dungeons. Giving herself invincible, ignoring defense or doing some kind of splash damage, switching between effects. I think this is definitely what Rosalie was built for. I think she's going to be MVP in most of the different elements. So, I mean, props to Rosalie. She should be really, really good here. Okay. I don't think Taliesin is going to be very good because the true damage effect I don't think is going to work. He already has it built into his ultimate that he won't work on bosses, so I don't think that's going to be a thing. And actually, maybe we just talk about legendaries in this video because it's already going pretty long. So I'm going to get rid of the epics here. Sorry. And then Valeria. Unless there's waves, I don't think Valeria is going to be really relevant. Okay, so that's the wood boss, right? Where we were looking at fire heroes. Let's look now at water boss. So for the water boss, we have a couple mechanics here. So remember, we also have to remember that the water boss will also have counterattack and putting on bombs. Okay, so it talks about being frozen if you don't have a number of positive effects, so we got to worry about positive effects. And then on top of that, we need to know if we can remove this frozen seal, or our heroes are going to be doing a lot of damage. We also need to know if this is something that can be blocked, right? Like if we have immune up or something like that. Okay. So, firstly, Bulin. Bulin has been a premier kind of damage dealer in dungeons because of her induction effect. She does have the ability to remove positive effects on somebody. And then she also grants herself immune. So I do think she is going to be relevant because of that immune, being able to block the bombs. And then if it's possible to block these frozen seal debuffs, this is going to be even better for sure. So this is a positive effect from the immune. And then on top of that, she gives herself a lightning shield. So that is another buff. So it's pretty interesting. I think Bulin's going to be pretty good. If any of the abilities that the bosses have count as positive effects that can be removed, I think Bulin's going to be kind of a premier damage dealer. God Fairy, I think, is still going to be just a PvP unit. The only thing is if you can steal one of those effects, God Fairy may be interesting. I don't know. I still think that it's just a PvP unit. Kasim actually has the ability to cleanse himself of those frozen seals if they're removable with his passive. So Kasim could be a premier damage dealer, being able to dodge counterattacks, being able to remove some of those debuffs if the frozen seal is removable. And then on top of that, if any of those buffs are buffs that can be removed or stolen, I think Kasim is going to be top tier, which is amazing for me because I have him booked and I use him everywhere. So pretty cool. Ralph here, Rick. I don't think Rick is going to be useful in these dungeons. He does have stealth, which is interesting. You know, he ignores some defense, and he counterattacks, which ignores defense up, damage reduction, and shield. I haven't seen anything from a mechanic perspective that we've seen so far that would make me think that Rick is going to be relevant in this dungeon. So Muriel is obviously going to be fantastic because of this whole thing that, avoiding this frozen unless you have a number of positive effects. If you have Muriel, I'm kind of guessing that this dungeon's going to be easy because her passive just puts up 3 positive effects on your team. So you might have to find ways to loop back around to her. But at the same time, like putting attack down, increasing your team's damage, and then removing negative effects with the bomb, as well as additional attacks, from your heroes, Muriel is going to be a slam dunk. I also think that Yolanda is going to be really good. She gives bonus turns as well as immune and attack up to your team. She removes negative effects and puts up a big shield on people. As well as applying an additional buff with this guard ability. So Yolanda is also going to be premier as well for people who don't have like Muriel, like me. I haven't been able to pull her. I don't think Savannah is going to be useful here. Whether or not the bosses are immune to poison or not is going to be really interesting to see if Gangelo is relevant. So we'll see there. But this is a huge question mark. I don't think that Avera is going to be that good. She's more of a PvP unit, and even there, she's not really useful. Desmond. I haven't seen anything about Plague or anything like that. So, who knows? I know his Plague doesn't work on bosses, I think it says somewhere around here. Does it say it? I haven't read him in so long. Oh, Plague is ineffective against bosses. Yeah, Desmond still sucks. Oh, no. So, yeah. Don't use Desmond. Shane, I think Shane is still going to be a premier person here. Being able to give buffs to people, increase your damage on your damage dealers, reducing the attack of the boss. Yeah, for sure. Jocasta, I think, is going to be a premier hero, actually, as well. For those who have Muriel or don't have Muriel, I don't know if she'll play well with her or not. I'm assuming she will. But applying Invincible, heal over time, keep your teammates healthy, removing negative effects, and then also being able to, remove negative effects or at least reduce the cooldown on negative effects could be good. This could also backfire depending on the bombs. So you might have to be careful with this. I don't know. But either way, the fact that her ultimate removes negative effects on all of your team members is going to be good enough. She also has immune and defense up, as well as healing, so she's going to be a slam dunk on top of being able to do 3% of true damage to the water boss. The water boss doesn't say anything like the fire boss being immune to all true damage. So Jocasta is going to be premier there. I think Fiona is going to be also really, really good. One, she gives herself invincible buff. On top of that, she does bonus attacks, and she continues to give herself buffs. So I don't think Fiona will ever be frozen. I think she's going to be a really top-tier unit for this boss. So it's nice to see people like Fiona fitting into team comps, I'm hoping. Rachel, I think, is still going to be amazing. She's fantastic in Queen of Tides and Guild vs. Environment boss. On top of that, she gives your team 2 buffs, which helps with the water boss, to avoid frozen. And on top of that, she has this amazing special ability that just does so much damage to water bosses, which is based on their max health. And on top of that, she removes 2 positive effects. So if any of the buffs on the bosses are removable, Rachel is just going to be hands down, a top tier unit here. Adet, I don't think is going to be relevant here. She does have really good debuffs, but at the same time, the fact that her true damage is based on those negative effects is still good. But, stunning, silencing, that's not going to be relevant. So she may be okay just because those debuffs are relevant. And if the true damage actually works on bosses, maybe she'll find a place. I don't know. I still think Ashlyn's going to be pretty good. I think you have to build her a certain way, but being able to shuffle through and remove debuffs like the bomb from Ashlyn, I think is going to be pretty relevant. On top of that, being able to switch back and forth and give herself a shield counts as a buff. And then her light ultimate ability doing additional damage, to bosses I think is going to be good. So I don't think Ashlyn, I do think Ashlyn is still going to be really good in these Chaos Dungeons. Mathasia can be pretty good. I guess we need to see, what happens with the bombs and being able to remove them. It might not be enough. I don't know. Being able to revive your entire team could be relevant. I still think that there's going to be more relevant heroes than Mathasia. I think she's kind of just a PvP unit nowadays. But yeah, I guess we'll see. Goobeg. I still think Goobeg is going to be bad here, sadly. The fact that he grants those bonus turns, I think is going to be a downside because of the bombs. Also, I don't know how many times the bosses are going to counterattack. So if he has 4 turns and he's just being counterattacked all the time, I think Goobag is still a bummer. Donovan, I don't think has any relevancy here. He removes shields, and there's no mention of shields for the water boss. Fahim, I think he's just a bad character. So I don't think he's going to be relevant. Barclay, I don't know how bleed comps are going to do here, so I don't know. And then Fenric, I think, is still just useless. So I don't see any reason why Fenric or Fahim would be relevant here. So what we've talked about a lot is a number of those positive effects, and then we did talk about some heroes that remove some of those Frozen Seal debuffs with Yolanda and Jocasta. So I guess we'll have to see there, but speculation is that they can. I'm hoping. All right, and then last but not least, let's bring up my sticky note again, is the Fire Boss. So, Fire Boss. Here we go. So again, counterattacks and bombs, right? It also says at the beginning of the battle, consumes a large amount of HP, and he's immune to all true damage, poisons, etc. We don't know what etc. is. And then he gets a lot stronger with all of his lost HP, but then also gives himself a crit up buff. Okay, so this first guy, Grayson, he is still, I mean, he's kind of good at Ash right now, Ash Magisteria Dungeon, but he has this weird trait that says when an enemy receives positive effects, removes 1 positive effect, and then he gains this crit damage. So just from his trait alone, I'm assuming he's going to be able to remove this crit up buff and then give himself bonus crit damage, so that's already good. And on top of that, he has an ultimate ability that gives your team attack up 2, and he ignores 50% of a fire hero's defense. So this guy's looking really, really good. Also, being able to gain immune to himself to avoid other debuffs like the bombs that they put up. This guy was built for these, for sure. And then just applying defense down 2 is a nice basic. So Grayson, I think, is going to be top tier for the Fire Boss. Blackhorn, I think, is going to make a comeback here. He has lots of heals, so a little bit of sustain. He has attack down on the basic, and he has that totem, which allows to remove negative effects on your team, like the bomb. So I think Blackhorn's making a comeback for Chaos Dungeons, so very, very cool here. Opal, I think, is still going to be amazing in these Chaos Dungeons because she is like a premier water damage dealer with joint attacks. The bummer with Opal, if there are no waves, she's only going to get that up for 1 turn. So this is interesting. We will talk about Light and Darks, specifically like 1 or 2 epics that I think are going to be good that kind of pair nicely with Opal. And then on top of that, she removes negative effects from herself on her counterattacks and her basics. So, sorry, not counterattacks, joint attacks. So pretty cool. So I still think Opal is going to be fantastic. Okay, so for Nero, I don't know if he's going to be relevant or not. I don't know if Unhealable is going to be relevant to him. I will say that he does have immune on his basics, so being able to avoid some debuffs could be cool. That's about it for Nero. Pluto, they don't mention anything about minions or a bunch of different people, so being able to activate his trait, I don't see him being relevant in this dungeon, which is kind of sad. Halia, I don't know. The issue with Halia is these bonus turns actually can be a detriment to your team, considering that it decreases the overall timer count on the bombs. So on auto, this could be an interesting thing. I don't know, but increased damage from her Ocean Lights trait, I think, could play a role here because the Fire Boss seems like somebody that you have to kill really quick. So Halia could be relevant. I guess we'll have to see. Tashir, I do think Tashir has some relevance in this dungeon. She's able to keep your team fairly tanky. She does have the ability to remove positive effects if any of these bosses have buffs that allow you to remove positive effects. And on top of that, being able to remove negative effects as well as increase some damage on your team could be relevant here. Mulhex, I don't know. I mean, he gives your team attack up, but I think everything that Mulhex does, Grayson does better. So if you don't have Grayson, which I think a lot of people won't have, Mulhex might be okay. I still don't think that this is his spot. Hydricia, I don't think so as well. Mikasa, I don't know. I mean, her damage from bleeds is really, really impressive, and maybe there's a bleed comp with the bosses after stage 12 where they're switching between elements, like with Barclay, because he's wood. So there could be some relevance there, but as of now, I don't see it. Ciara, I mean, she does have the increased damage debuff on her basic, and she can do some pretty big damage, but at the same time, if there's no waves and you just go straight to the boss, I don't think this is going to be Ciara's place to shine. Alun, also, I don't think is very good here. Thor, I don't think this is going to be Thor's place unless there's specific things, with bleed comps, but the fire boss completely ignores the true damage, so I just don't see that being relevant. Lyerly is an interesting one here because on her ultimate, she scales. Her damage scales between her max health and the boss's max health. So this could be interesting, and she has a chance to launch bonus attacks with her ultimate. So, yeah, I don't know. She could be relevant here. This is a toss-up. Aaron, I think Aaron is going to be really good here. Just being able to do multiple attacks on the boss with his ultimate, bringing everyone in for a joint attack. He actually kind of plays well with Lyerly. It's really interesting because she has a 50% crit rate whenever launching an attack during an ally's turn. So you can build her with 50% crit rate and just like maximize a lot of damage with Aaron. I think that's kind of a cool thing. It'd be nice to see Lyerly be useful. Therese, I don't think is going to be viable here. Same thing with Tia. Same thing with Hyam. Afroween, she could be relevant here. Being able to keep herself healthy could be a thing. So it'd be interesting to see if she's relevant outside of PvP. Lydia, I don't think is going to be relevant here. But this leads us into Poros. So Poros, whenever he first came out, people were like, what the heck? I don't really understand this hero. But there was tons of speculation that he'd be really useful in dungeons, specifically this Chaos dungeon, because he was the first of his kind that had this kind of ability, and I think this guy's going to be absolutely killer in this dungeon. So if you pulled him on limited summons, I mean, congratulations, everyone. So he increases all team members' damage against enemies below 50% health by 30%. So just a trait-wide ability to give all of your heroes increased damage whenever it's looking like this boss is always going to be under 50%. Really seems interesting. So I think Poros is going to be a key piece in speed teams. He also gives this increased damage taken to enemies, and then if their health is below 50%, it doubles the lost health base damage and increased damage taken too. Poros is going to be premier here. And then his special ability, being able to scale, is nuts. So yeah, Poros is going to be fantastic there. So that's all of the bosses, guys. This is who I think is going to be relevant right now with the information I have. I did want to talk about at least one specific hero, which is Sacred Windstrex. So Sacred Windstrex, she has a big shield similar to Brand, And then she also removes negative effects and applies damage up too, as well as being able to heal people and then remove negative effects as well, and applying attack down, defense down. I think this is going to be a fantastic light epic for dungeons. So anyway, that's what we got, guys. I know it's a long video. Sorry about that. But I wanted to go over all of the mechanics, get you guys excited, and then also pay attention to that Facebook post that's coming out tomorrow, right? All right. That's what I got for you. Hope you enjoy. Catch you later.